Welcome back. Live on 5, Yasmin and Mike are here. And, well, not just Yasmin and Mike either. We're going to look at what Donald Trump's tariffs might mean for your money. These are all the headlines about stock markets and dropping and businesses changing their plans. But how does all that affect the pound in your pocket? Happy to say we've got our expert in the studio to help explain. And we're also going to be taking your questions about what the tariffs mean for you. Call us 0207862 2222. Ken Okoroafor is the founder and CEO of The Humble Penny and author of the Sunday Times bestseller, Financial Joy. Here it is. Financial joy. They're not two words that usually go together, Ken, are they?
No, they're not. But it's about the mindset you have with money and your relationship with money. So, okay. Yes.
I would imagine at the moment that people are not necessarily feeling joy. They're feeling trepidation, worry, curiosity maybe about if there are opportunities even from this strange time that we're going through.
Yes.
Let's talk first off about maybe the most obvious thing. When you see tariffs being imposed on products, we assume that that's going to mean that somewhere in the marketplace, everyday stuff even, we're going to see prices going up. Is that right?
Yes, so we expect prices to go up as well as to come down in different areas as well. So the reason for that is because, generally speaking, when tariffs are placed, tariffs are taxes basically, when they're imposed on products, companies that are exporting will see their prices go up and they might pass those prices on to the everyday consumer. But over time as well, the exchange rate between the dollar and the pound, if that appreciates against the pound, it means that companies that import into the UK, their prices might go up and they might pass those price increases on to the everyday consumer.
Okay. So what are some of the places we might expect to see prices go up? Which kind of subject areas, which products?
So agricultural produce, so, cheese, meats, whiskey, even cars are a big one. We produce cars here in the UK that get exported, so that might be an area. Fashion, high fashion, those get exported out the UK into various parts of the world. So that might be an area that we would expect to see price increases over time.
So basically crossing borders, that's the thing that you want to avoid, things that have come from overseas. If you rely on those, either in your work or every day in your own pocket, then those are some of the areas where you might start to struggle a little bit.
Absolutely, but there could also be places where costs are expected to decline. So, for example, companies that might ordinarily send their goods to the US, for example, might decide to send them a bit cheaper to the UK instead in the future. So we may see certain reductions in price in certain areas depending on what those are over time.
Okay, so...
Can I talk about a fool's question, perhaps? So US companies like McDonald's or KFC, do their prices go up in the UK? The prices consumers pay?
Well, in the US, the companies there actually bear the burden of the tariffs that are imposed. But because these are global companies, ultimately, we end up feeling the effects of that because supply chains move around and that finds its way into our pockets at some point from a cost perspective.
I mean, this is the globalised economy, isn't it? Actually, if you're eating your burger in Coulsdon, in Surrey, the beef may have come from Europe or it may have come from the States. And so depending where that's come from, presumably that's going to affect the price. OK, you guys are getting in touch. Linda's on Facebook and says, I am worried Trump's actions could impact food prices. Could prices go up? I mean, our food, where does it mostly come from? Are we reliant on the rest of the world? And actually, as you say, if it's from Europe, could we benefit?
Yeah, we could potentially benefit, with some things. But again, with food, we're actually expecting that to be a net increase over time because of these tariffs that have been added. We import a lot of things here into the UK. And if the UK does actually respond by imposing further tariffs, what happens is that the companies that actually export from the UK will actually bear the burden of those additional tariffs that are imposed. And what they end up doing is saying, well, actually, these are new costs we have to pay for. We'll end up adding those to the costs that the everyday person pays. Okay. So we could see costs potentially increase from a food perspective.
Yeah, we've got another one, Richard's on Facebook, saying, American people pay less for petrol. I'd like to pay what they pay. Well, I mean, we're already seeing some movement in fuel prices at the pumps, aren't we, Ken?
Yeah, so I looked up this morning, actually, the current price for oil. It's about $64 a barrel. And that's been a decrease since we've had these these tariffs that have been imposed. What that actually means for the everyday person is that we're likely to see up to a 6p savings in petrol or diesel over this period. So that's good news in a way because that price has fallen.
And I think that's going to get better, isn't it? Because if the world's going into global recession, less petrol is used in every country, isn't it? Therefore, demand goes down. Therefore, demand and supply means the price keeps going down. So that, I think that is one benefit. But it's not good globally because, of course, there's no growth, is there?
OK.
Yeah.
I'm going to take another. Robert's on Facebook. It says, look at your pensions, then tell me it's funny and you like what he's doing. The man is a clown. He's not mincing his words, Yasmin. Do you have pensions? Are you worried about your pension?
Yes, of course, because it's the state pension, I think, is fairly steady. But the private pensions, which, you know, many of us have taken out, they will be affected. Of course they will be affected. And I wouldn't call him a clown. I would call him one of the most dangerous man in the world today, actually. We should stop laughing at Trump. We've been laughing at him for too long. He's a menace. OK, so we have two people. I mean, state pensions, we'll put them to one side. We have people who are past state pension age who are taking their pensions now. And then you have people who have workplace pensions possibly or building their pensions now. How do those two groups of people need to look at what's happening right now?
So the first thing to say with pensions is that when you look at that balance, your pension statement, it can feel very disheartening because everything's declining for almost everybody, pretty much. But for the people who are far away from retirement, we should look at this as this is part of what's expected generally when we have a pension. For most people who might not even think their pension's invested, most pension companies invest our money in the global stock markets. Around 60p in every pound thereabouts gets invested in the US. So we are exposed in some way. For those people who are far away from retirement, the best thing to do is to do nothing. And I know it's very difficult to say this, but it's best to just step away from it because one could actually make mistakes by selling at a loss or, you know, almost having a knee-jerk reaction to what's going on. For people who are almost at that retirement phase, typically what happens is there's a gradual transfer from riskier type investments like stocks and shares into less risky assets like bonds gradually over time. But one needs to be very careful because if they start to sell during this, you know, very volatile period, and if they're drawing down their pensions, it might be they'll be drawing down a lot less, first of all, but they might be drawing down at a loss as well. So if one can...
Just clarify that with you, Ken, sorry, on the pensions, because I'm now drawing on private pensions, right? So I've got a pension pot. It's all paid. I'm not contributing into the pension anymore. And it's gone up by about 3% a year over the years I've been drawing it. Can it go back down 3% a year? Because it's a guaranteed payment.
Well, it depends on the type of pension you have. So you might have a defined contribution pension. If that's still invested, then it has that exposure to the marketplace. So it can go up, it can go down, and you are potentially affected. But it depends on what's actually invested. You might have some cash portion, you might have some bonds, you might have some shares.
Stocks and shares.
It's the stocks and shares element that has the most exposure.
It sounds like you don't want to hit the panic button. Somebody comes out of the blue offering you a great deal to get your pension out. Don't do any of those things. That's the key. I want to take a call, actually, because Kerry's on the line. Kerry, tell us what you want to find out from Ken.
Hello, my love. My daughter and her partner are just starting out buying their first house. Do you think 5-year or 10-year fixed rate is more preferable, to be fair? Like, which way are the mortgage rates looking like going with all the uncertainty with Trump and all of his clowns, really?
OK, great question. So with the tariffs and everything that's happening, what we expect to happen with the UK economy is that there will be a negative impact on the UK economy. And this is, you can look at the research on this. What that means is that, from a day-to-day perspective, is that the Bank of England might need to accelerate reduction of interest rates in the UK. So the expectations are that we might see about 0.25% decreases on interest rates this year. What that means for people taking out mortgages and buying, trying to buy a house, or people who have mortgages already, is that their costs are expected to reduce if those changes are made.
So if Kerry's daughter wants to wait, is that the
exactly.
key?
So the point really here is 10 years is too far into the future, personally. If I was making that decision, I'd say at most 5 years, because these rates are expected to move as a way of trying to help the economy to get going because of what's happening around the world.
OK, Ken, thank you so much for joining. Kerry, I hope that helped you out there. It's